These are crazy times for Brisbane, and a great time to be running the Brisbane channel, I gotta say. See, we've got state elections coming up, and so there's a whole lot of hustling going on before that. The Olympics are 8 years away, but they're already affecting things here as well. And there's just so much going on in the city, and I'm going to be telling you 10 things that you might want to be across just to stay up to date with what's happening in the city. The first thing is the 50-cent fare trial. Well, it's no longer a 6-month trial. Stephen Miles announced that if he gets in the upcoming election, then he will make it a permanent thing. David Crisafulli, a few hours later, said, we're committing to making it a full-time thing as well, a permanent thing. Not only that, but we're going to look at improving the public transport system, more reliable public transport and more services that they're looking at running. So obviously, no matter who gets voted in, those 50-cent fares are going to be the new normal for Brisbane, which is a great thing, and all of Queensland really. See, they've actually been really popular. In the first 5 weeks that the 50-cent fares were introduced, there were 2.6 million extra trips made across Queensland. So it's definitely been embraced. And so obviously the politicians are not stupid, so they want to get the votes in the election coming up. So they're committing to keeping that on beyond the 6-month trial, which is a good thing for everybody, really. And while we're talking about that election, one of the things that has been a bit of a political football is the whole Olympic Stadium thing. That is worthy of a video in itself and something that I do have planned. I haven't begun any shooting for that, but it is coming. So make sure you're subscribing so that when it does come out, if that's something that interests you, you'll be able to watch it. So yes, the Olympic Stadium, it's 8 years from the Olympics. And there's been a whole lot of talk, a whole lot of hustling, a whole lot of plans made and dropped and remade and dropped again. And we still don't even have locked in an Olympic stadium for the event.
What's going on right now is not a good look for any of us. We need to improve that look. I'm working on that.
So the president of the Olympics Organising Committee for Brisbane has said that they've not actually got a position yet on the stadium. Stephen Miles from Labor, who's the current premier, is saying that we're going to use QSAC, which is the Queensland Sport and Athletics Centre. We're going to use that. We're just going to do some temporary renovations to add more seats to it. And that will be the Olympic Stadium.
Let me assure you of this. Brisbane is going to put on the best ever Olympic and Paralympic Games.
The leader of the LNP party, who is hoping he gets in the election, is saying that Queenslanders are embarrassed by that idea and that we're going to look horrible on the world stage. And so he's not going to do that. And he's promising a 100-day review into what to do, but he's also promised that there'll be no new stadium. So will they be renovating the Gabba? Will they be doing something else? Who knows? The whole thing is quite a debacle. And so it will actually be really good for somebody to get voted in, whoever it is, in the state election, so that finally we can stop worrying about what people are going to vote for and actually just make a damn decision on the thing. So yes, that will be happening in October, obviously, but at the moment, you know, the president of the Olympics Organising Committee for Brisbane is saying, hey, you know, the Gabba is not even going to be usable. Its end of life is, I believe, 2030. And so maybe Cricket Australia, maybe the AFL should start pushing for a venue, because if nothing's done in terms of venues in Brisbane, there's going to be nowhere for these sports to be played in the long term. And he's saying that Brisbane needs a legacy, something that lasts beyond the Olympics, that can be valuable for the city. So anyway, that's an ongoing thing, but at the moment we have no stadium. So that's update number 2, that nothing is locked in, everything's in the air. And that's it for the Olympics for now. The sponsor for this video is Mobile Computer Geeks. They're your local team of experienced technicians. They handle everything from computer upgrades and repairs to securing your devices online. Need web design, web hosting, business emails, or IT support? They've got you covered. With same-day service, they come to you and will find the best solutions for you. Call Mobile Computer Geeks today and let them take care of your tech so that you can focus on what matters most. Mention the Brisbane channel when you book for 5% off your booking. And members of the Brisbane channel get 10% off every time they make a booking. Now back to the video. So the third thing, obviously Queen's Wharf Precinct opened at the end of last month, at least the stage 1 of that. And just a few days later, we discovered that Star Entertainment, which owns 50% of Destination Brisbane Consortium, which basically built the Queen's Wharf Precinct, they're in serious financial trouble. It's partly connected with the inquiry, the Bell inquiry. There was a second Bell inquiry in New South Wales that the first inquiry discovered and exposed some pretty dodgy practices, involvement with organized crime, money laundering, and that the culture of Star Casino in Sydney was not great. And so there needed to be reforms and a change in culture. The second inquiry found that, okay, they haven't actually proven yet that they have reformed the culture enough. And so Star actually delayed releasing its annual report, and that led to their listings on the stock market being paused. It's still on hold. They're not trading at the moment on the stock market, and they are really struggling financially. And so Queensland Star, they've just poured $3.6+ billion into the Queen's Wharf Precinct, and they're saying, hey, we need money, help. And so they've appealed to the state government. They've asked Stephen Miles, the Premier, to allow them to put off the taxes that they pay from, gambling revenue and other things, to put off those taxes until a later date, until they get things sorted. They've also been granted, verbally at least, an additional $100 million from the banks and whoever they're borrowing money from to get themselves sorted. But it's really not a good look when, it's just opened up and we're like, hey, are they even going to be around for much longer? Is somebody going to buy them out? Who knows? But it's quite a mess. Another thing worthy of a video of itself, one that I am looking forward to doing because I could talk for ages on this, but I want to be well researched. So yeah, I will put together a video on the whole Star Casino Queen's Wharf Precinct debacle right from 2017 when things really started moving for that. It's been quite the story. So yeah, you can look forward to that on the Brisbane channel. But let's move on to the next thing, which is connected. Because Star, they're in need of money. The casino used to be in the Treasury building, and now it's moved across to the Queen's Wharf Precinct. And so they have just sold the license for the Treasury to Griffith University. From 2027, the Treasury will be a CBD campus for Griffith University. It's going to hold the law, IT, business, and postgrad departments, schools. Yeah, that's an interesting development because people were wondering, hey, what's going to happen with the Treasury? Is it going to become a shopping center? Maybe, forget about Uptown. Maybe the Treasury will be the new Maya Center. Yeah, but no, it's going to be a university campus for Griffith University. So there you go. That was some big news this month. Point 5, Beam scooters. What a mess. So up until now, Brisbane has had 2 e-scooter and e-bike companies. So there's been Lime, which was here. It was the first e-scooter company in Brisbane. They left for a little bit and now they're back. And then Beam. And it's been found there was a bit of a whistleblower who reported that Beam were underreporting the number of devices, of scooters or bikes that they had out on the streets. There was a cap on how many they could have. And so they had a lot of these devices out on the streets that were not being reported, and they got found out. So Brisbane City Council has cancelled the contract with them. They found that in a 12-month period, there were 222,000 devices not reported. It was basically 500 on the streets each day that were underreported. So a bit of dodgy practice. It turns out that this is something that Beam reportedly has been doing in various locations. They were also found to be doing the same thing in Auckland, New Zealand, and also Wellington stopped using Beam as a provider for e-scooters as well. So goodbye Beam. Brisbane City Council has put out, a notification that, hey, we're looking for another provider. So who knows who'll be providing the higher e-scooters alongside Lime into the future. We'll see. But there's still Beams out there. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I have noticed a whole lot of Beam scooters and bikes out on the streets still. So I'm not really across the specific dates of when they'll be off the streets, anything like that. But at least we know that their days are numbered. Yeah. While we're talking about getting around Brisbane, another major announcement. I did kind of mention that it was something being considered in the last update video back in August last month, but it's now official that Brisbane City Council will be extending the metro system, the metro network. They're adding 22 new stations. It's basically extending it northward, southward, and eastward. Not a lot of love for people out west. It's really still serving areas that are reasonably well served by public transport at the moment. But the good thing is that the more that these higher capacity, long buses basically can take passengers that are currently using other forms, that maybe we can reallocate the buses that are now not needed as much to new areas and extend the bus network. That's the hope. We'll see what happens. And of course, on the Brisbane channel, we'll keep you up to date with that as well. There is actually a competition running for people that want to take a ride on the metro before it actually launches. The details of that will be in the video description. The seventh update is with regard to fire ants. They're a highly invasive species that's come into Brisbane and are spreading. In the US, they've killed 80 people, and every year they cause billions of dollars of damage in the US. We're trying to stop their spread here in Australia, but they have been gradually increasing their territory. At the moment, they're found in 700 hectares of land in Brisbane. They're really a big danger to the area. And one thing that they're a particular danger to is koalas. They've actually been identified as particularly vulnerable to the fire ants. And, koalas are already in a bit of trouble. So they need all the help they can get, and they don't really need another threat, which they have now found to have, because at least 5 nests have been discovered in the Neville Lorry Reserve, which is part of the Daisy Hill Koala Reserve, and not far from Daisy Hill Koala Centre. Fire ants have been found to be potentially very threatening for koalas, platypus, echidnas, so this is not great news for Brisbane. Of course, the Brisbane channel is interested in what's happening right across Greater Brisbane, not just Brisbane City local government area. And Logan has had some news in the last month or so. And it's been good and bad news for Logan, and both relating to potential building projects. The first is that they've announced a new sports centre, Olympic Standard Sports Centre, $142 million project funded by the state and federal governments. It's going to be an indoor stadium completed by 2028, if all goes to plan. You know how these things go. And it'll feature 9 courts across 2 separate halls, and will be able to host as many as 7,000 spectators. Meanwhile, another development that was looking at going ahead and was approved by Logan Council is a new hospital, which is desperately needed in the area. It was going to be a private hospital with 90 beds, and that was going to open up opposite Logan Hospital, the public hospital. But Even after the application was approved by council, the shopping centre right next to it put in an application to have that application cancelled, saying that there weren't enough parking spaces and that the building was 15 metres too tall. That appeal against the approval was actually granted. It was successful. And Australian Unity, who was behind the new hospital, basically said that this is too much trouble. It's going to cost too much. It's going to impact on us too much to try to redesign things, resubmit an application. So they just said, okay, we're going to forget about it, and walked away. So the hospital is not going ahead. We got a sports centre in Logan, but no new hospital. By the way, I said we, but I don't live in Logan. I live in Brisbane, but you don't care where I live. And while we're on other Greater Brisbane local government areas, an independent report came out recently showing that Moreton Bay City, compared to other local government areas in southeast Queensland, is vastly underfunded as far as state funding goes. Despite being the third largest local government area in Australia, it receives far less funding per capita than pretty much the rest of southeast Queensland. So Moreton Bay City Council's Mayor Peter Flannery has said, hey, we need some more funds. They want funding for more social housing, for roads, for community infrastructure, and funding to care for their wildlife. Sounds like another thing the Brisbane Channel should do a bit of an investigation into. So yeah, we'll see if that becomes a video as well. And make sure you are subscribing for that. But for now, that's all. I've got 10 updates on things happening in Brisbane. This is the September edition. I'll see you in the next video.